So once again we will have a battle replay on a map that was built. This is the Elven Front, which I haven't used in a video before, so we'll see how this one goes. I did actually try to use this in a video once before as well, but it was so one-sided that I decided better of it. This one is considerably closer, so it will be more entertaining to watch. And also a bit of a sort of announcement, because university is starting up again relatively soon, in fact within the next couple of days of me making this, so by the time this comes out it's quite possible semester will have already started. I will not be able to upload with quite the same frequency as I have been doing for the past couple of months, and I'm sure that in the past week or so you have noticed a little bit of a drop off because I have been having to get certain things in place. So yeah, well, I will be able to do sort of a video every 2 days when the new patch comes out, because talking about unit stats and unit comparisons is something that I can do on my own in my own time. Whereas large-scale battles, even one like this, which is only 5 players, takes quite a while to set up sometimes, and it also, the battle itself takes about 2 hours on average, and then I have to make it as well, so the time involved is a bit prohibitive, but even so I will still be doing battle replays, of course, provided I can get good ones. But the frequency of the videos, at least until the new patch comes out, will probably go down from 3 videos a week on average to 2 videos a week. I will still try to get 3 videos a week out, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Meanwhile, back to this battle at hand on the Elven Front, and this one really is... the lesson to take away from this one as the battle goes on, you'll notice, is you have to be careful what you use your ammunition on, even if you think you're getting a lot of kills. And that goes for both sides actually in this battle. One side more than the other though, and it leads to the side, well, one side's downfall. But we shall talk first about the defenders, essentially, because while this is a field battle, the defenders have this hill that they can take real advantage of, and a few choke points as well. So they will be taking a very defensive stance, whereas we will be taking a very aggressive stance. I'm on the attacking team. The Woodland Realms playing Asg da Dwarf, so I'm pretty sure that's a Warhammer expression, as axe. But yes, he's playing as the Woodland Realms. He's got some Elder King's Guard, he's got Elder Royal Guard as well. The defenders, I believe, had 15k each for this one. He's got some Elder Council as well, so javelins, and there were no rules aside from good versus evil, and sort of the good side are going to be defending. So the Woodland Realms naturally are stacking up pretty hard on archers with Elder Royal Guard again. Then over here we can see more Here-E Beng, and then there's some Here-E Dirith over here, so some defensive infantry, very tough to kill. Then some Forest Bladesmen, which, you know, they're still pretty tough considering they're the lowest of the Woodland Realms infantry. They're still very good. Then you've got some more Here-E Beng over here, so he's gone again. When there's no rules of the Woodland Realms, and this is also a good opportunity to show the Woodland Realms skirmish force in their full glory. Forest Bladesmen, because there is no cap on the archers that he's allowed. Here-E Lang as well, probably my favourite of the Woodland Realms infantry units to look at. And then he's also got some more Here-E Dirith over here. And then down here in the middle he's got some Forest Bladesmen taking cover in the most fortified part, which is kind of strange. Then he's got some more Dirith, and he's got some Forest Wardens as well, some Spearmen. And I think that is it. Yes, it is. Well, at least that you can see. There are Sindar Blade Masters somewhere as well, and there are also Elder Pathfinders. I think, yes, there are. There are a couple of units of Elder Pathfinders down here. Not quite as hardy as the Elder King's Guard, but they are still, you know, they do still have hit points, and their charge is still very deadly, so if they can get their money's worth for these units, that will be very, very good for them. And then over here, their allies supporting them, reinforcing their seemingly stranded position, is Gondor, played by Master Blaster. He's got a couple of Axemen of Lasarnak, good against armour, so they will be good against the, well, 2 of the opposing factions. He's also got some Gondor infantry, of course, Gondor infantry and Gondor spearmen, the heart and soul of any Gondor army. And then here, he's got a General's Bodyguard. Again, they're not very good in cav-to-cav engagements, but they will still nonetheless be quite effective at mowing down our infantry, and they're also pretty effective in sustained melee, more so than most cavs, simply because of Gondor's armour. In fact, I might get a cheeky screenshot of them. But yes, Gondor's cavalry is very much focused around its survivability in melee against units that are not cavalry, weirdly enough. They do a better job than most at staying in melee with infantry units, but they will still start to fall after a time. Then we have Gondor archers here. Again, I need to fiddle around with the shader a little bit because it is still a little dark, but I have tried to up the brightness a little bit. And then he's got some Gondor Citadel archers over here as well, just basically a stronger version of that. And then if we head across the bridge, the reinforcements continue as we see another unit of Gondor infantry. Some Pelargir Marines as well, javelins could be very useful in the late game. They need to get into a fortified position like the Elder Council though. And then he's got some Citadel Guard, very strong spearmen, Wardens of the White Tower, Sons of Argonath, these are all his elite units. Fountain Guard, Shielded Fountain Guard, some Lasarnak Nobles, and a Trebuchet. So the Trebuchet can actually stay across this bridge, and it will be very difficult for us to get over here. Although, fortunately, they didn't decide to bank up on just this one little bridge over here, because that would have made for a very boring battle indeed. But nonetheless, we shall commence going through the attackers' armies, and Minhash over here is playing as Rune. He's got some Lok Na Rim, some Lok Innis Rim, of course Rune very heavy on the armour piercing, so they will be good versus Gondor. Less good against the Woodland Realms. They don't rely on their armour all that much. Any units they have that are armoured are not like massively armoured. It's still a focus around their skill. Clan Guard as well. Lok Na Rim. So he has got a skirmish presence. He's also got a catapult. And then down here he's got some crossbowmen. The crossbowmen will be very useful against Gondor as well if we can get in close enough. The Scion Rim, again, they're an armour-piercing spearmen. Very heavily armoured themselves. Again, a very cool looking unit. I do like the Scion Rim. They and the Naru Naaru Royal Guard are very similar in the way they function. The Carmel's chosen. I'm a big fan of these guys. I think they're getting even stronger in the next patch as well. They're being really the centrepiece of Rune's infantry. And then he's got some Lok Flag Rim as well. The Flag Rim, the heart and soul of a runic army. And he's also got some clansmen as well, just to bulk out his infantry force, and more Na Rim. So yeah, pretty standard runic force all in all. No Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen, but then they are very expensive, and no Sapphire Bladesmen either. At least not that I can see. And then over here we have Dwayling playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. He's got a pretty hefty warg force, 2 Warg Riders and Bolg's Champions. Bolg's Champions, of course, if we zoom in a little bit on them. Certainly a very dangerous warg unit. So despite the fact that the enemy have got, you know, the Woodland Realms have got 3 units of Cav, Gondor's got a unit of Cav, we should be able to counter them with these wargs and the Innis Rim. And then he's also got some Black Uruks of the Mountains, heavy Goblin Crossbowmen, so again, more crossbows. If we can get in close enough without the Woodland Realms shredding them, we'll have a good time there. Mountain Uruk Archers as well. They're not terrible archers, actually, the Mountain Uruk Archers. They're not quite on the same level as the Mordor Morannon bows, but they're still pretty damn good if you can get them into the right position. And then over here we have the Mountain Uruk Blades as well, forming up the centrepiece of the Misty Mountains line alongside the Black Uruk Warband. Nothing too special, but still pretty decent. And then somewhere around here he's got some Goblin Infantry. I know he has. I saw it. Well, regardless, I guess it's hiding. But yes, he does have Goblin Infantry as well, because of course they are free. And then the final army is my army, of course. I am playing as Harad, and my army is, unfortunately, based on the side of the battle that I was on, I was rather hoping I would be going up against Gondor with all of Harad's nice armor piercing, but unfortunately I am not. I'm up against the Woodland Realm, so I'm going to have to be careful. I've got 4 units actually of Haradrim archers, so I've got a very cheap skirmish line, at least for the most part. Then up front here, I do like using pikes, so I'm using the Muhad Beast Tamers. I was actually under the impression these guys were halberdiers, but they aren't, in fact not. They are pikemen with their very long spears, so this will be useful if I can get them into the fight against the likes of the Woodland Realms infantry, because it means they won't be able to slice me up quite so quickly. A couple of units of Haradrim spears just to fill out my infantry line a little bit. A full complement of 5 Southron Warband. Again, these guys are armor piercing, so as spearmen go, they are pretty darn useful, but not against the Woodland Realms. Against the Woodland Realms, they're actually less useful than most spearmen, because of course the price for armor piercing usually is they have a slightly lower attack score. And spears are already pretty slow at killing infantry. I have a catapult as well, so hopefully I'll be able to bombard their fortified position. Over here I have a unit of Hashari. This is probably the one unit I have in the army which will be very effective against the Woodland Realms, provided I can get them into melee without them being shredded by archers. A couple of units of Trollmen, of course. Harad should always bring the Trollmen in the current patch because of how tough they are, how much damage they can do as well. And then finally, my general. I don't have any cavalry, but my general is in the other Hashari unit, the Hashari Shadows, so I do have one good skirmish unit. So we'll start the battle, and we shall commence, well, we shall focus at least on this defensive position, because Gondor will immediately start to move all of their infantry over to help the Woodland Realms hold this hill. They will need to take on a defensive stance, because obviously in an open field with how much numbers we have, we would wash over them. And they also need to defend their archer position, because the Woodland Realms with all of their archers are going to be incredibly effective at holding down this hill, especially against the Misty Mountains lower tier units, and mostly against my entire army, because Harad, of course, not very focused on their armour. And so the Woodland Realms are a very effective faction against Harad normally. Harad do have answers to them. The Serpent Guard are pretty effective against the Woodland Realms, and the Hashari, of course, are very effective indeed. But for the most part, we can see it's an uncharacteristically soggy day out here in the eastern scrubland. But yes, obviously, there was also a bit of a problem with getting the Gondorian units across the bridge, but eventually they do make it, and it's not really too much of a problem. But yes, as we can see, the attacking armies, Rune is essentially going to move to reinforce the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. And I'm going to be sort of just moving into position, seeing if I can lightly skirmish down the Woodland Realms. But we shall see. The Misty Mountains and Rune, of course, can sort of join their forces and attack up this one hill here. So they will be able to use brute force a little more than I can. And if we look here on this map, we've got sort of this hill over here is kind of blocked by this settlement, so it's really awkward for me to try and sort of worm my way in and get a sort of nice wide attacking line. Most of the time you end up blobbing pretty hard because of this weird positioning of this. If at all possible, I would have liked this to be moved back a little bit just so that the attackers can actually head up this ramp without being impeded too much. But again, maybe that's the idea. And over here we can see some Bang moving into position. I do like the style of the Woodland Realms. We get in nice and close to them. Again, the elves, all three of the elven factions have their style plus points. And of course Linden will be added to that roster as well. I'm going to be interested to see how Linden get on. Apparently they are in Divide and Conquer, I know that they are a pike focused faction, which means they will be effective in melee in a different way to most of the other elven factions, at least as a focus. I mean, the Imladris guards are all monstrous pike units in melee. I used them a couple of days ago and they killed legions and legions of Uruks. Again, I don't think most people realise, but the best way to deal with a pike line is to use mass rather than just throw units at them, because a unit like Imladris guards will just kill them as they approach. And one of the best ways to go into mass is to use a pretty heavy unit with shield wall. So something like the Blackwatch Legion will munch their way through a pike line. Even something like Ironfoot Warriors and shield wall against a lesser pike unit will do very well for themselves. So if you're struggling against a pike sort of build, use shield wall units en masse, and then you'll be able to push through. Shields aren't just defensive beasts. You see the General's bodyguard moving around there. Again, the Misty Mountains is largely being stationary until Rune can approach. But over here, we can see that I am starting to let loose my arrows. My Haradrim archers, of course, not a very good unit, and indeed, because of their weakness, the Woodland Realms player is very wisely not returning fire on me, because the Haradrim archers will actually not do a huge amount of damage to these units. Again, I was hoping to goad him into skirmishing me back so that he would waste some of his ammunition. Now, he will take a few losses from these Elder Royal Guard, and that is a big loss, and that does mean my Haradrim archers will have paid for themselves, but the bigger tragedy would have been if he started using these Elder Royal Guard units' ammunition on basic units of Haradrim archers. But at least, you know, this is kind of a no one really wins situation, because he's going to be losing a few of his high tier elves. In addition to that, I also do target this unit of Hiri Beng back here, so he is going to be losing a few elves to arrow fire, but I'm not really getting what I want. I'm not really getting him to use some of his ammunition, because of course most of my units, especially my pikes, will absolutely evaporate to the Woodland Realms archers. My advance is going to be a tricky one, particularly if the Woodland Realms turns all of their attention onto me. And of course we can see over there in the background my allies are still sort of getting into position. And we can see that the Gondorians are starting to cross the bridge down here again. This is another potential place you can defend across this sort of dried out riverbed. Again, he's moving his Lasanac nobles over the bridge. I don't think you'd be able to get the trebuchet across the bridge. Bridges are notoriously spiky to use. Yes, of course, Gondor is getting the majority of their initial army up here, consisting mainly of Gondor infantry and their archer force. So again, more archers are going to be on this hill. It's going to be tricky. Going to be a tricky position to take, but of course we do have the significant numbers advantage. Again, you can see there's one Elder Royal Guardsman dead on the floor. Always a tragedy. I'm actually a little surprised the Woodland Realms did not bring the Elder Royal Council. Again, there's a case for saying, based on their defensive stance, they should have brought the Elder Royal Council along instead of the Elder King's Guard, because they already have their Pathfinders as a cav force to run around and potentially run interference on our advances. And of course, with the addition of the wargs, that does make that somewhat difficult. And the Elder Royal Council, of course, very, very devastating indeed. My Haradrim archers still doing their thing. Again, I think people underestimate the usefulness of low tier archers a lot of the time. because they can very, very easily pay for themselves in harrying the enemy, particularly if you're attacking. Again, if you're defending, a little less so. If you're defending, you want to go for high tier archers, and in a sort of 1v1 pitch battle, a mixture of the two wouldn't go amiss again. So here we can see that the Gondor Citadel archers are in range, and the Gondor Citadel archers will be a match in terms of skirmish for the Mountaineeric archers. The Mountaineeric archers are not in range, I don't think. So at this point, if you're just being shot, then you should just move in and start trying to skirmish back, particularly when you've got your ally up here with his Loknar Rim. Again, he's also got clansmen. There are forces across the river over there. You can see some generals' bodyguards sort of hovering in position. Again, the clansmen will be destroyed on the charge by general's bodyguard. They do need to make sure that the wargs and the Innis Rim are ready to respond to a cav charge. Again, the Mountaineeric archers are moving up, which is, the right move, because they're just being skirmished down as it stands, and you need to start using the ammunition in these guys. Mountaineeric archers firing back onto the defensive position. This defensive position, of course, you can't go up the areas with stakes, but it is still wider an attack avenue than I have. Of course, these Citadel archers, he's also got spearmen in shield wall. The spearmen in shield wall will absorb the arrow fire quite nicely. Also standard Gondor archers here. Again, the skirmish presence of the enemy is very high. I do like the look of the Citadel archers as well. The black capes, the indication of an elite Gondorian unit. Although it looks like the capes are actually chainmail capes. But yes, the defensive position will be difficult to break down, but at least the other side is being skirmished. And over here we can see that the Elder Pathfinders are making a play to try and destroy some of those Mountaineeric archers. Now, of course, the Elder Pathfinder's on a charge. Fortunately, they are in loose, so the Mountaineeric archers won't all die off the charge immediately. These wargs, though, the wargs have a rather goofy running animation. Now they're up to charge speed, though. And I think they are going to be caught. Yes, they are. The Pathfinders are going to be caught in melee by the wargs. And they're going to take some pretty severe casualties as they try and run away. And here come the other unit of Pathfinders. And the wargs are going to continue to come out. Now, the wargs would be a good target for the archers, but I don't think that the enemy are coordinating that far ahead. And these wargs charge into the Pathfinders, and these Pathfinders will be ripped apart by the wargs. Wargs are a very effective anti-cavalry unit. Again, we can see these Elder Pathfinders trying to sort of worm their way in and around to the archers as well, I think. But I think they realise that their other unit of Pathfinders is being carved up. And at this point, it's going to be too late. I mean, the Warg Riders are going to already have done their job if the Elder Pathfinders are all removed from the battlefield. Of course, there is still the Elder Kingsguard, but it doesn't really matter too much. Standard Wargs, the Volks champions are still in reserve. These Pathfinders did manage to charge into these archers again. The Mountaineeric archers have been bullied, rather. But again, such a thing can't be helped. These Elder Pathfinders trying to get away, but they've taken a pretty severe amount of punishment. They're going to try and charge. No, they're going to charge into the front of these guys. Now, fortunately, actually, the Goblin infantry that was hidden actually blocks the charge into the Mountaineeric blade, so they do actually manage to save a unit that's much more important than them. They actually managed to get a kill for their troubles. Again, these wargs need to hurry up though, because otherwise the Pathfinders will find a way into the back ranks. The Misty Mountains also do have some Blackback Berserkers somewhere, but then that tends to go without saying. I mean, the Misty Mountains will never not bring the Blackback Berserkers, they're so tough. The wargs, however, they were a little slow to react. The Goblin infantry did block the initial charge, but unfortunately the wargs, stationary for too long, allow the Elder Pathfinders to get a very nice charge off onto the Mountaineeric blades. And again, the more infantry we lose now, the worse it's going to be for us in the long run. I think they actually did. They actually did run through the stakes there, so more Elder Pathfinders are gone. Now if we look over to the other side of the battle, I am actually starting to sort of move up. My lower tier units, they're all in loose formation. My Haradrim archers that are out of ammunition, and my Haradrim spearmen. Taking a few losses to skirmish fire, but again, that's fine. My army, honestly, is the least effective. I have the least effective tools to deal with the job that I have been given. Again, my other two units of Haradrim archers have taken up the position the previous two were in, trying to just skirmish down the elves as much as I possibly can. And again, over here I actually changed target from the Elder Royal Guard. I killed a few of them, but it's over here where I've actually managed to sort of lower the amount of men in this unit of Hirti Bang by a decent amount. Again, the Haradrim archers will have already paid for themselves by doing this. I'm not getting rid of any of their ammunition though, sadly, by doing this. Just getting kills as it stands. And again, if we look over here, the Bolg's champions, and again, this is the price that the wargs paid. Now that was actually a decent charge onto the backs of the Gamp Rim, but that was the price. The wargs, they hesitated for just a little bit after that Goblin infantry managed to trap them, and now the Elder Pathfinders are able to get more kills again. If enemy cav is running around, you need to devote your full attention to it. You need to keep your wargs and your anti-cav units moving. And again, this Bolg's champions now has the opportunity to sandwich them, but they're standing still. They're completely stationary, and that means that this catapult is going to get charged. And if we lose a catapult, that's, you know, again, if you're going to have wargs and have cavalry, you need to be more awake than this. I mean, this is a terrible mistake that the Misty Mountains player made. And again, this cavalry is pretty much gone at this point against the unit of Elder Pathfinders that should be dead, long dead. Let's see, is the catapult crew still alive? I mean, there's still 7 of them alive, 6. I mean, it's getting to the point now where the catapult is out of commission. And that unit of Bolg's champions sat there and watched. Terrible, terrible play there. Meanwhile, look over here, this unit of Gondor General's Bodyguard has taken a lot of losses, I assume from the crossbows, because the runic crossbows are nearby, so to speak. I mean, there's no way that archers would be able to do this amount of damage to such a strong unit. There's also this Innis Rim. It's going to be charged, so, you know, the Innis Rim is going to take a lot of losses off that charge. Again, unnecessary. The Cav micro from my allies has been pretty shoddy so far, it has to be said. Again, that Innis Rim, that unit of Gondor General's Bodyguard was largely destroyed, and they managed to basically half a unit of Innis Rim. So basically, as a result of daydreaming, that's all I can call it, we've lost a catapult, and we've basically lost a unit of runic cavalry. And the entirety of the Misty Mountains archer line, near enough, is gone. Unfortunately for me, on the other side, things aren't going too peachy either, mainly because I'm advancing, but I'm trying to sort of advance in waves, mainly because I can't afford to go into the archer fire. But of course, I've mentioned advancing in waves as its downsides in the past numerous times, and this is true here as well. I mean, Haradrim spearmen and Haradrim archers stand no chance against Woodland Realms infantry and melee, particularly not when they're under archer fire as well. Even with the help of a slightly more effective unit of Southron Warband, the Woodland Realms are not reliant enough on their archers for this to be worth it either. And again, I'm trying to sort of block this unit of Dirith. These Forest Wardens are coming in as well, and if we get in a nice close-up, you can see the disparity in the uniforms they wear. This is going to go very poorly for my units, but again, I didn't really have much of a choice. I need to make my move, and unfortunately Gondor infantry is also coming down. I'm sending up my Haradrim archers that are out of ammunition again, trying to sort of make it so we can't just be broken immediately. I'm sending up more units of Southron Warband. And also, it seems like my allies are now sort of pushing on this front as well. Again, I think that the cavalry, the wargs, and the Innis Rim, if they were used effectively, we would have been able to cut off all of this elite Gondor unit from crossing this bridge and able to get in and around. With the Pathfinders and the General's Bodyguard largely gone, but again, this General's Bodyguard is still running around when it should be dead. Again, these wargs, they're dawdling around the battlefield, and it's painful to watch. And this Gondor elite units have managed to make it back to their very defensible position, unfortunately. Now this Gondor infantry, this Goblin infantry, has managed to sort of engage the Gondor archers in melee, but it won't matter too much because again it's such a narrow point of attack, and it won't be too long before one of them realises this. In fact, the Goblin infantry, while the balance of forces even again, you can see actually that there is Elder Council javelins firing into Goblin infantry. That is a waste. So the Goblin infantry is paying for itself very much so by absorbing javelin fire from such an elite unit like that. If we go back over to here though, you can see that unfortunately for me, I'm now subject to the Elder King's Guard, which managed to just sort of charge through my lines and break several units of my Haradrim spearmen. Now fortunately I do have Muhad Beast Tamers here, and as pikemen in sustained melee I will start to do some decent damage to the Elder King's Guard. Unfortunately, however, the enemy infantry is pushing forwards, and I'm trying my best here, but I'm being quickly overwhelmed. Again, I'm only one army, and unfortunately for me, I'm the subject of some elite units. Again, I could have sent forward my elite units, and I'm sort of desperately trying to sort of send forward more units of Beast Tamers and Warband to try and staunch the bleeding over here, but it's not going too well. Again, I could have waited. I could have waited for further on in the battlefield, but I did also realise that if I did, the enemy skirmish fire would have been focused on my allies, and my army is much better off trying to absorb the arrow fire than theirs are, so I'm trying to take one for the team, and it is kind of working because several units of archers, the enemy main cavalry unit is also weakening itself on me to an extent, but again, it's not going as well as I would have hoped. I would have hoped to at least made it a concrete position that I could try and wear them down from, and unfortunately it's not panning out. Meanwhile, if we go back over to the other side, we are actually starting to see a bit of a front line over here again. The clansmen are trying to sort of worm their way in and around the Gondor spearmen. They're being backed up by Mountain Uruk blades. The Mountain Uruk blades need to get in there though. They need to sort of commit more, essentially. There's some goblin infantry that's routing, of course. A very common sight. These goblins are not really designed for the task that they have been asked of, but then that's nothing too special. If we look over here, we can see that the Gondor General's bodyguard is still alive and well, and it is in melee against a unit of clansmen, but against this many clansmen with how much damage it's already taken, they will actually lose, or they should. And then these Mountain Uruk archers. There are these Wardens of the White Tower. I mean, there is still Gondor units that are still over here, and the Wardens of the White Tower will be a very good unit to try and cut off. But again, it's only Mountain Uruk archers over here. I'm very surprised that they haven't sent across any infantry units, because again, the defenders can afford less mistakes than we can. You know, if we can capitalise on something like this, it's an ideal situation for us. If we can stop the Wardens of the White Tower from getting back there, that's a victory for us over here. And it's something that the enemy, honestly, in a defensive situation like this, missing a unit like that in a final stand, it might be something they won't recover from. But unfortunately, it does look like they have a clear run back because they didn't commit any infantry other than clansmen, being a bit too conservative with their troops again. I wouldn't recommend just charging everything forward, obviously, in this sort of situation, but you know, you can't afford to be too coy. And again, taking a lot of losses from just standard Gondor archers as they advance. But again, it is only lower tier units. Excuse me, my voice is going a little croaky. These Gondor Citadel archers trying to get into melee. Again, if we see here, my Southron Warband again find themselves in melee against Hir Dirith, which is just the worst fight imaginable for them. They're not going to get anything done against that superior melee defense, and their armor piercing is all but useless on a unit from the Woodland Realms. Again, I do believe that units like the Dirith are actually well armored, but again, it's against like very armored factions that you really want to be using your armor. In fact, up here against Gondor infantry, the Southern Warband under normal circumstances would be quite effective.
Half of our men.
They probably wouldn't win, but they would still at least inflict some damage. But unfortunately, with the presence of that Dirith, the Gondor infantry is going to be just fine. Again, I'm trying to sort of just push my catapult up as well. Now, unfortunately, if we look over here, my Hashari Shadows have taken an awful lot of losses, mainly because initially I did manage to actually sneak them in and do a fair amount of damage, and I was actually getting some decent kills on some Hirti Bang, and I was also getting some hits on their Elder Royal Guard. As you can see, they've lost a few more since last we saw them, but unfortunately they were spotted, so I did end up running them away, because again, it is my general's unit, and that is a very good target for them to go after. And they're still sort of, and again, you can see the difficulty I'm having because of this sort of little thing here. Forming up a like effective front line is pretty difficult with a pike unit, and again, I'm taking side fire from a unit of Bang. And there are also Gondor Citadel archers over here, and they're going to target my catapult, unfortunately for me. My catapult has already scored a few decent hits though, so it's not a total loss. But again, as you can see over here, the Wardens of the White Tower made it without a single casualty. The Clan Guard are being committed. The Clan Guard will do quite well against these standard Gondorian units. Again, armor piercing, and they are supported, but with all these missiles that we're having to go through. But again, it does look like the missile presence on their side, at least, has largely dissipated, and you can see there is a lot of routing, unfortunately, but now a little bit more of a concerted push, it looks like, which is good news. Now that the missiles are largely gone from their front, the time is now to push. And the Misty Mountains are sending forward their Black Uruks, which is a very attack-minded unit indeed. They will do very well against Gondorian units, especially archers, obviously, but against the standard Gondorian units, a shock troop like the Black Uruks is just what the Doctor ordered. And there's also Black Uruk Warband and Loke Flag Rim, so this is This is much more like it. And over here we can see attempting to retreat these Gondor infantries, but again with Flagrim on the scene, this Gondor infantry is doomed. So we did manage to cut off one unit from retreating, but it wasn't the one that we really wanted to. Again, Black Uruk Warband, not the best unit. Again, they're probably slightly less good than the Mountain Uruk Blades, but it is still more men, and this is much more like it. Again, this is a paper-thin line at this point. Of course, the enemy does have reserves, but just the fact that they would have to commit more to this fight is a good thing for us. Dirith would be... Again, is that a unit of Dirith? Yes, it is. Dirith would be a thing to help staunch this bleeding, but the enemy, you know, they're in a little bit of trouble on this side. However, on my side, they are holding quite firm indeed. You can see that, unfortunately for me, I really wasn't able to make this count. Again, I wasn't able to set up a front line quickly enough. I wasn't able to commit my pikes in the fashion that I would have liked, and unfortunately, my catapult is also falling by the wayside to the hands of those Gondorian Citadel archers. There's that Elder Kingsguard, which is still alive. But again, you can see that there's a few little masses of burnt corpses up here, so my catapult has done its best. Getting a few hits on, I believe, Fountain Guard. Maybe even the Sons of Argonath. Again, my pikes have sort of stabilised. They have sort of got into the position where they're not dying anymore because they're not being shot, and they're not going to die quickly in melee, so I do at least have a bit of an opening to send up more. But unfortunately, just as I say that, the Elder Kingsguard is right here on hand. And again, I haven't really had much of an answer to them other than my pikes, and my pikes have been shredded by archers on the approach. And again, that's sending another unit of Southron Warband fleeing for the hills. However, that did cost the Woodland Realms their general. Again, the elves probably won't rout. But that is the end of the Elder Kingsguard, basically. There are two of them still running around, but two of them are going to be no match for anything I've got back there in melee. But yes, finally the Elder Kingsguard has largely been made toothless. But at what cost? I mean, if we look at the percentages of kills, the enemy are a huge amount ahead of us. So the balance of power is basically dead even, but you would give the advantage to them at the moment simply because they have the defensive position, and they also have the elite units. However, over here we can see that things are not going quite so well for them over on this front. That, I believe, was the Trebuchet. It was. That was a very nice hit on the Loke Flag Rim. Again, we've got this Black Uruk Warband as well. These Gondorian spearmen need assistance, because over here in particular, the line is starting to bow, and these Black Uruks are mountains again. Gondor is sending in these Axemen of Gossanak to try and stop the rot, essentially. And also these Gondor archers that are out of ammo, just adding more mass to the line, which is understandable. But here there is a bit of a way in, should they choose to take it. So yeah, the line is starting to look a little bit ropey over here, but again, they haven't really committed any of their super... Actually, no, that's a lie. The Sons of Argonath are here, and defeat seems certain for the Sons of Argonath. That tells you how many Black Uruks and Loke Flag Rim there are being committed, and the fact that they're only backed up by archers that are out of ammunition. So again, a bit of a sticky situation for the enemy there. If we look over here, we can see that I have committed my Hashari. And again, the Hashari victory seems certain. You can see how quickly the Hashari were able to take effect on these very lightly armoured Woodland Realms units. The Hashari are very, very effective against lightly armoured infantry, provided you can keep them away from archers, which, fortunately for me, the Gondor Citadel archers did not focus them down as they approach. The Hashari, when they get into melee against someone like the Woodland Realms, will do a lot of damage. Again, they will die off eventually, but the amount of damage they will do should be significant, especially against Dirith. Against Elder Royal Guard, there's going to be a little bit more of a problem, but fortunately I'm also committing my 2 units of Trollmen. Now, the Trollmen did take a few losses on the approach as well, so again, I've been hitting the brunt of this, and fortunately my ally did send over some Warg Riders to recharge those Elder Royal Guard, so that should help for a while, but it's looking more and more like my army just needs to survive as long as possible and buy time for my allies. Sort of occupy as many units as I possibly can while my allies advance up the hill. I'm just sort of charging through with my Trollmen. The Hashari and the Beast Tamers will mop up these Forest Wardens quite quickly. Gondor Citadel archers trying to reload. Trollmen of Harad. Now this is exactly the sort of engagement they like. Again, just like the majority of Harad's forces, the Trollmen are most effective when against armoured units, because they are one of the few sword and board units to be effective against armour. And emphasis on sword there, obviously axe and board units are effective against armour. But the Trollmen will be able to cleave, well, 2 units of Trollmen especially, will be able to cleave their way through a unit of standard Citadel Guard without too much of a problem indeed. and indeed they will also be able to do such a thing against standard Gondor infantry as well. So again, this is what I was hoping for from the outset, really, a fight against the Gondorians. And Harad will be quite good against Gondor. Again, if we zoom in a little bit, the Trollman in all their glory, with their sort of African tribal shields and swords, very savage looking sawtooth blades. Unfortunately for me, those Hirti Bangs still have ammunition, so I'm still the subject of arrow fire as I advance, but fortunately my Hashari were able to make it unmolested to the front lines. Blackback Berserkers are being committed to the front line to reinforce. Again, this is understandable because Gondor committed their Fountain Guard to the front line, and the Fountain Guard, along with the Sons of Argonath, are a very tough force to break down indeed. And of course there are a few Gondor archers that are out of ammunition. The Meat Shield and the Dirith have also been committed as well, so the defenders are very serious about keeping this line up and running. There are also Scion Rim. Scion Rim are armour piercing. They are spears, so they will get their killing done slightly more slowly, but they of course are quite tough themselves to take down. The Axemen of Lasarnak have done quite well for themselves actually. For a lower tier unit they seem to have done quite well. And now there's another unit of Gondor infantry trying to sort of reinforce the line. So what have we got in reserve? We've got Loknar Rim, we've got the crossbows. Now this is the key. The crossbows of both the Misty Mountains back there and Rune are now able to get into position, and they're able to do it largely without any sort of response. Now there is this unit of Hirti Bang, but they're the only archer unit on this side that still has ammunition. And over on the other side, of course, there's that other unit of Hirti Bang. But this is the problem, they don't really have too much of an answer for 4 units of crossbows at this point, mainly because they poured so much ammunition into my forces. And you can see those bold champions. Unfortunately, my ally makes another mistake with his wargs in the fact that he charges them sort of way too close to shielded Fountain Guard, and essentially one unit of Warg Riders is now dead. The Woodland Realm's trying to sort of charge into the rear with these Forest Bladesmen against my Trollman. The Trollman are doing real work against the Gondorians. Again, the Gondorians don't really have much of an answer to the Trollman that's on the field. Again, usually cavalry would probably be the best way for Gondor to take on Trollman, but unfortunately their cavalry is long dead. Again, the Shielded Fountain Guard defeat is almost a certainty, and this shows the power of the Hashari. You know, there's only 27 of them, and yet they're still giving the Shielded Fountain Guard, which are a spear unit admittedly, so they do get their killing done very quickly, whereas the Hashari are very much an attack-minded unit. But even uphill, fighting against a very healthy unit of Shielded Fountain Guard, the Hashari are still making their presence felt. It just goes to show that when they're in melee, they can do a real... They do work. Again, I think they're a really underrated unit. Again, I don't think a lot of people like them, mainly because they have such a horrendous weakness to archers. Like, they melt. I mean, you saw the Hashari Shadows that I had. They're basically the same unit, only with bows. I think their melee stats are actually identical. You saw how quickly they died to archer fire. Meanwhile, over here, we can see that, again, the crossbows, the clan crossbowman, and the heavy goblin crossbowman are now in position, and look at that. I mean, there is actually this unit of Citadel archers that has ammunition as well, but it doesn't matter too much because they are getting absolutely shredded by the crossbow fire, and this unit of Bang is out of ammunition now. So, I mean, the question remains. I mean, the crossbows also have a pretty decent shot on some of these units that are sort of back a little further. These Pelargir Marines, there are 7 of them. So, at this point, it started to look like, despite the fact that my army got absolutely eviscerated by archers on the approach, as Harad can do, particularly against a very skirmish-heavy force like the Woodland Realms, it's looking like perhaps they should have... well, they should have targeted the other way. I mean, to be honest, my army would not have made much of a dent on the Woodland Realms infantry anyway. You know, the only thing that would be my Hashari. You know, obviously they wanted to shoot me with some skirmish forces, but I don't know. I think that I can't help but feel like they focused too heavily on me, which in the end, what I was trying to do with my Haradrim archers, in the end, turned out to be what I attempted to do with my entire army. Again, I wasn't expecting too much glory in the way of this battle. I mean, I got slaughtered on the approach, but it gives my allies a bit of a window. And also, my trollmen here are doing work in melee, so I'm really starting to sort of thin out the Gondorian ranks. Again, the trollmen are starting to fall, but they've managed to really rip their way through a lot of Gondorians. You can see some more Warg Riders just coming in, trying to help with the Gondorian Citadel archers in melee. I still have some Hashari left alive, although they are dying now. Shielded Fountain Guard, largely still standing. These Muhad Beast Tamers, they're not going down easily. All I'm doing is occupying the enemy at this point. In the background there, I've got two Hashari Shadows, one of which is my general. One of the returning units of Goblin Infantry is going to try and help me hold the enemy on this front, and I think that the enemy, what they want to do is finish me off quickly and then focus on the other front, because you can see that Wardens of the White Tower are on their way down here now. There's also Elder Council sort of waiting in reserve, and I don't blame them, because if they finish me off quickly, it means there's only really one front that they have to focus on. And in terms of quality, they probably could still hold back the enemy, especially if they can get into a position that mitigates the crossbow fire. The Blackback Berserkers are chanting, and I believe that actually did send that unit of Gondor infantry routing. How interesting. There's a unit of Sindar Blade Masters preventing the surround. Again, I think that's Axeman. Again, the taunting is working. How about that? A mass rout from the Axeman of Lasarnak. Good use of the taunting. Over here we can see Elder Royal Guard. The addition of the Elder Royal Guard and the Wardens of the White Tower will be enough to finally finish off my Trollmen, but the Trollmen did a lot of damage to the Gondorians, and that's all I can ask of them. The Hashari are still going. The Hashari are so difficult to kill in melee with their melee skill. Again, we can see that I'm receiving a bit of reinforcements from Goblin Infantry, if you can call such a thing reinforcements. But it will just make my forces a little bit easier to break down. Again, let's go and have a look over here at my general, because my general is one of the two units that's still alive. Again, you can see he's a bit bloody and a bit banged up, and he's with his buddy over here. And look at this. I mean, the Hashari Shadows were the unit of mine that the enemy were very justified in going after with skirmish fire, because they are very accurate. They do a lot of damage at range, but they have a horrendous weakness to skirmish fire. But over here, it's looking like the end for the defense position over here. Again, they're starting to be overrun by the runic infantry, the Blackback Berserkers, and the crossbow fire from both attacking factions over on this front. Again, the Elder Council has been committed, but they're pretty decent in melee, but they're not going to be decent enough to take on Blackback Berserkers. The Blackback Berserkers are the perfect unit to take on the Woodland Realms in melee. With their heavy attack, they tear through a lot of their units. And again, we've got this Gamprim flanking around. The Fountain Guard surrounded. Let's get in a closer look. Yeah, even the Gondor's finest in the Fountain Guard will not be able to survive this. There's a bit of friendly fire going on from our crossbows, though, it looks like. Although they are trying to go for those Hirti Bang. Again, more units falling. And as we can see, we have now managed to pull ahead rapidly thanks to that crossbow fire and thanks to the big push on this front. And again, it just shows how quickly things can turn around, and it shows how targeting the right units is very important, because they really did focus down a lot of my Southron Warband and a lot of my sort of standard Haradrim units. Complete waste of ammunition, really. Your infantry would have been far superior to them in melee, easily enough to deal with them. And now you're having to suffer the wrath of crossbowmen and very elite units in melee like Blackback Berserkers. Blackback Berserkers have very little ammunition. Against skirmishers, they do very poorly, but unfortunately you don't have enough ammo left to deal with them now. So despite sort of pulling ahead because of the archers in the early game, it's now looking very, very bad for the defenders. As things carry on, you know how difficult it is to regain the lead as the defenders in the late game. It is still possible though, mainly because of the very elite units they still have left. They're probably still going to be victorious on my side, it must be said. Again, I've still got some beast tamers. This goblin infantry is routing once again. Again, my trollmen are largely dead at this point. There's still there's still a few down there. If we look in there, they're trying to take on shielded Fountain Guard. They're actually getting a few more kills as well. Unfortunately, there goes the Misty Mountains General. Again, the Bolg champions tried to charge up there to stop them, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. The gold infantry is out. So yeah, with the addition of this Elder Royal Guard and the overwhelming of my my trollmen, my army is doomed at this point. Again, my beast tamers won't be able to survive when they get surrounded, so my army is basically forfeit. My 2 Hashari Shadows will remain, but my army is the first to fall. However, the enemy are sort of retreating down here, and they're trying to sort of crush me, it seems. There's another unit of Goblin Infantry on the way, sort of making things a little bit more difficult for them. Let's go in a little closer. We can see that the Elder Council defeat is a distinct possibility against Blackback Berserkers and Flagrim. And then further back there we have Gondor Infantry that's routing. There's some Bang as well, but really the only thing left in melee are these Elder Council. And then a unit of, I think this is Forest Wardens over here. No, it's Bladesmen. Forest Bladesmen against the Golden Boys. They will fall. Again, the Blackback Berserkers were such a good unit to bring for this sort of situation as well. Especially seeing as the enemy had very little skirmish power left to deal with them. But yes, this is the end of my army. My Beast Tamers were crushed all at once. A couple of units of Goblin Infantry are going to try and stop the enemy, because the enemy now, they're abandoning this hill. Which seems like an odd sort of thing to do, but again, there isn't really any place they can go to which is safe from the crossbows up here. I mean, in this divot, the crossbows could just go up on this hill and shoot them to oblivion. It'd be like a firing squad up against that rock. But yes, the enemy are now retreating, and it looks like they're going to retreat over to that hill encampment over there. Now, they don't have any skirmish fire to answer the crossbows. Unfortunately, the Goblin Infantry is almost routing on contact, but, you know, they did at least manage to delay for but a moment. There's also those Gondor archers that are routing. So yes, the retreat is on. And let's see, is the rearguard action still in effect? Not really. Victory. So finally, this defensive position is breached, and things are looking quite bad for the defenders, but look how long in the battle there still is to go. So again, actually we will need to make a little bit of a cut though, because there is a bit of manoeuvring. The enemy are going to be heading over to this hill over here, sort of this encampment, and then this sort of higher hill here, and then we will have to lay siege to a defensive position that includes some not insignificant units. I mean, if we have a look at what they have left, in melee, could they make a decent stand? I mean, they've got Elder Roar Guard, they've got Bang, they've got Lang, and they've got Wardens of the White Tower, Shielded Fountain Guard. Those units of Gondor Archers are routing. There's a unit of Wardens of the White Tower. There's also some Drips and Drabs, 6 Fountain Guard, routing Axemen. A couple of Sons of Argonath as well, so, you know, in melee they could give us a decent run for our money. I mean, the Gondorian infantry would largely be cut down by the armour piercing that they have, but it would still likely, I mean, the balance of power is still relatively even. I mean, it's not impossible that they could win this, it's just very, very unlikely. But we'll make a little cut, I think, because it is quite a long period of manoeuvring around. So as you can see, setting up on this hill with my 2 Hashari Shadows, which have been here for quite a while, hitting the enemy, they're sort of trying to avoid the crossbow fire as best they can. And interestingly enough, the Misty Mountains has actually overextended a little bit here. He's sent forward his Blackback Berserkers and what's left of his warband on their own. And so the enemy, alert to this and wise to this, decide to try and overwhelm the Blackback Berserkers while staying out of range of the crossbows. And this is a very good play by the enemy. If they can deal with the Blackback Berserkers, they will stand more of a chance. Now the Berserkers will take their toll in melee regardless. But even so, I mean, this was a very odd decision from the Misty Mountains, which I noted late on in the game. I was a little bit confused as to why he sent forward these guys on their own. And I get that he wanted us to attack, but there was really no rush. I mean, we were just sort of setting up our position and getting ready to close the jaws, and he rather prematurely advanced. But regardless, these Blackback Berserkers, we'll just say they got overeager. The law reason. Again, you can see that the Runic Catapult is still in effect. I mean, amazingly, they did manage to survive, well, one of them at least managed to survive that savaging that they received earlier on. The crossbow bolts are arcing over the hill, but the amount of damage they will do from there is relatively low. Again, these Hashari Shadows, they're very quick, as you can see. Hashari Shadows are immensely fast. And you can see I'm just sort of trying to, I mean, I had nothing else to do other than micro a unit that had 2 left in it, so I mean, that was a near miss. Again, the enemies are clustered in the face of that catapult, so the idea maybe wasn't too bad, but unfortunately these Blackbacks are being all too easily overwhelmed in melee. The final stand of the elves and men. can see my Hashari shadows just running around. The Scion Rim and the Carmel's Chosen preventing them from going this way. Again, the Flag Rim ready to receive them if they try and go for the catapult. There's also heavy Goblin crossbowmen getting in position. The clan crossbows are out there. The Gamp Rim are defending the hill that they're on. The shielded Fountain Guard. A narrow miss there. Shielded Fountain Guard are going to charge forward. The Shielded Fountain Guard against a heavily depleted unit of Flag Rim should win. Even with the armor piercing, I think the Shielded Fountain Guard are just too good. You can see those Gondor Citadel archers attack the catapult, and that should be the end of the catapult. We've got this Innis Rim still alive. And the catapult isn't dying too quickly actually. The Citadel archer's not doing the business in melee as perhaps the Gondor player had hoped. Master Blaster. Well, he managed to get one kill, I guess. The Citadel Guard, of course, very strong. You can see my Ashari shadows just sort of popping up in the background every now and again. These units just trying to sort of escape the crossbow's wrath, but it's going to be very difficult for them to do that now that the Misty Mountains crossbows are sort of guarding this divot as well. You can see my Hashari shadow is going to try and get some point blank hits. Again, the Shielded Fountain Guard victory is a distinct possibility. Running the Innis Rim through there is a bit of an interesting move. Seeing the Innis Rim on their own in general is quite a, it's interesting. That was usually something you saw in vanilla. The Bodyguard is something you expect to see now, or the Camel's Dragon Knights as the solitary cav unit that you bring. That Citadel Archer is still alive, amazingly. Still engaging the catapult. Again, my Hashari shadows are trying their best, just to try and get a few more kills. We can see over here that the enemy are sort of just trying to sort of retreat to a position where the crossbows can't easily fight, and most of the crossbow bolts are hitting the dirt, to be fair. But again, I mean, if you look here, we're 4% ahead now. Look at all the enemies. They're surrounded. You can see that there's some Hirti Beng trying to do their best against the cav. Again, I'm trying to sort of run my general away. Microing just one unit that only has 2 left in it is a rather amusing thing in the late game. But yes, we have Hirti Beng, Fountain Guard. I mean, the units they have left are not insubstantial. It's really just the fact that we have all the skirmish power at this point. Again, this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the match. Again, they used all of their skirmish on stuff that wasn't really worth it. I mean, they used it on my Hashari shadows, which was worth it. Again, my pikes were probably worth it as well. And on the enemy, on the other side, I should say, against the Misty Mountains, I don't know. I can't help but feel as though they used it on the wrong things. And I think that was key, because again, they went very heavy with their skirmish, as you would with the wooden rounds. I mean, even Gondor had quite a few archer units. Again, there was no rules, so you could bring as many archers as you wanted. And unfortunately for them, I mean, it didn't really pan out for them. Mainly because they used too much of it on me. And my army was by far and away in the most disadvantageous position. They would have been far, far better off using it on the Misty Mountains and Rune with their crossbows. And stuff like the Clan Guard as well. I mean, and anything that's weak to archer fire. I mean, in the end, armor-piercing units like the Flag Rim are not going to be too much of a threat to the Wooden Realms. And Gondor can just be there as support, so... Interesting. Hindsight is 2020. And over here we can see that the Hashari shadows, I decided to just commit them to melee because the Hirti Beng would actually win in melee against this many heavy goblins probably. But with the addition of my 2 Hashari shadows, again, they're identical to the regular Hashari in melee, particularly with my general there, who may be bloodied, but we'll see. I mean, my general is a brave soul. Parrying the elves. Will he get a kill? Oh yes he will. Gutting that elf. And dead. So yes, this unit of Lang will fall. Again, the enemy have tried to sort of divide themselves up to try and get as many kills as they can. These Lang don't stand a chance. There goes the Gondorian general at the hands of the Camel's Chosen. Again, the Camel's Chosen are armor piercing, so they will win against the ones of the White Tower, particularly as beat up as they are. Interestingly enough, these Elder Royal Guard tried to charge up the hill towards the crossbows position. They went into Nar Rim and Gamp Rim, but the Elder Royal Guard defeat is a distinct possibility because there simply isn't enough of them anymore. And again, they tried to just sort of spread out and engage as many of us as they could. But unfortunately, the Shielded Fountain Guard met their match, largely due to the crossbow fire of the heavy goblin crossbows, but the Flag Rim also held firm. You can see my general's still in the combat. Over here, this unit of Lang is now dead. The dual-wielding swords of, well, the single-wielding swords of the Hajari Shadows, dual-wielding is for the regular. And this is it, the end. The bitter, bitter end. Again, the defensive position was solid for them, and initially they were doing very well, but I think that, again, initially as well, they refused to engage my Haradrim archers in a skirmish fight, which was exactly the right thing to do, but from there on they seemed to target very strange things. Again, they could have gone for the wargs, and I do think that the heavy cow presence that the Wood Elves had, again, I would have traded in the King's Guard for the Royal Council. That's certainly something I would have done, or at least the Palace Guard. I mean, the Royal Council I think in this situation would be better simply because of the extra archer presence you would have, but I mean, the Woods to White Tower is still running around. But yeah, I think the Royal Council would have been superior. Again, the King's Guard did do a lot of damage to me, but I can't help but feel as though, again, like, doing more damage to my army wasn't what was required. It was having more of a skirmish presence to deal with those crossbows. And the heavy goblin crossbows are still plying their trade into the backs of the Wardens of the White Tower. Wardens of the White Tower trying to sort of engage the Flag Rim in melee, but the Flag Rim are armor piercing as well. So there really is no escape. I mean, these Lang are holding on for dear life. I mean, they've lasted quite a long time. Admittedly against Spearmen, you can see my Hashari running along in the background. The really fast run does look quite amusing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So this is it, the final stand.
They run like children. Scour them from the field.
So that's the Gondorian player gone. And this leaves just the Elder Royal Guard of the Woodland Realms as Gadadwar. Again, I'm pretty sure he's certainly got the highest amount of kills in this match. I mean, I have read the battle stats before, but... And unfortunately...
Was bolder than a rooster.
Bolder than a rooster. To be slain in battle. Although I should expect more... expecting competence from Dwayling is perhaps a little bit too much to ask. Again, my general, sadly, despite surviving against enormous odds throughout the whole battle, he was cut down by friendly fire. But this is it. I mean, this is the end for them. There's just two. Well, one now. He's going to be killed by Gamp-Rim, it looks like. No, he was killed by Nar-Rim, an archer that was out of ammunition. So there you go.
Only by a sword's edge.
A battle of several phases, of tactical retreats, of mistakes, as always. I mean, there's always mistakes. I do get a bit nitpicky sometimes, I admit. But here we go. I mean, amazingly, I didn't get the lowest amount of kills on my team. Again, mainly that was because I did charge forward and I did take the front foot, I suppose. But even so, my army was largely destroyed, and I did have the largest army on the field by a fairly clear distance. I mean, I have more men in my army than the Orcs had in theirs, so that should say something. Decent amount of kills from both the defenders. I think that maybe Gondor, their army composition, I don't really know what else they could have done differently, to be honest with you. I mean, I think they made all the right calls in terms of defensive units. Maybe they could have gone maybe a little bit more structured. But even so, I think that really the only thing in terms of compositions I would have said for the enemy is the Elder Royal Council over the Elder King's Guard. And maybe if they, you know, their cavalry play was pretty decent early on. I mean, they nearly killed the catapult. They did a decent amount of damage to the Innis Rim. Got some decent damage done on the Misty Mountains infantry, but again, that was more down to the wargs being too stationary for too long. So my battle statistics, I mean, let's have a look here. Again, the Shadows, they didn't get very many kills. They got rather scythed down. Most of those kills came from just those two guys that were running around at the end. Haradrim Archers got a decent amount of kills each. I mean, considering that was on high tier Elven Archers, not bad. The Trollmen, of course, they were the real stars of the show for me. They ripped through several units of Gondor infantry that was committed to try and stop them. Again, most of my infantry, though, was absolutely carved apart by Elven Archers. Hashari got 95 kills. Most of that was on pretty decent Wood Elven units and shielded Fountain Guards, so I'm very pleased with their performance. The Catapult getting 78 kills again, most of that on decent units like Fountain Guard. So while I didn't do perhaps as well as I was hoping, you know, things in this battle, they sort of conspired to make it so that I was the cannon fodder. But again, it doesn't matter as long as victory was achieved, and it was. So there we go, and it was a pretty close battle as well. I mean, it could have gone either way. But yeah, I guess the takeaway from this is make sure that you look at your enemy's army composition and target the right things. Don't just use your archer ammunition, particularly if you're building an army around your archers on just anything, because otherwise you will come to regret it in the late game, as the defenders did here. So yes, this was a battle on the Elven front, a 3v2. Again, I hope to keep up the uploads as best I can, but again, with University now very much in play, things are going to be a little bit more tricky. But again, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.